Hey friends, it's Rabbi Jenny Solomon at Beth Meyer Synagogue in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I thought that for today's mincha moment, this afternoon moment of pause and reflection, that I might do like a little one-on-one of counting the Omer. So growing up, I had no idea what counting the Omer was. And even as a young adult, maybe as I learned perhaps what this general idea of this ritual of counting the Omer, I certainly didn't include it as part of my one of my most beloved spiritual practices. So I'm so grateful that this has become a part of my own spiritual life, as I know it has for many of you. And so I'm going to share just a little bit about what this counting the Omer business is all about, at least as I understand it. So the Torah commands us to count the Omer. An Omer was like a sheaf of barley, and it would be an offering. So we would count each day between the second night of Passover to the holiday of Shavuot. So we would mark this period of 7 days a week, 7 weeks, 49 days in total, as a way of sort of marking the journey from leaving Egypt, Passover, what we're in right now, through the wilderness to the moment of Mount Sinai, Shavuot, when we celebrate receiving the Torah. And as our Judaism is what is and was wise to do, we took this very ancient practice in which we would have offered a sheaf of grain as a gratitude offering. And because we are no longer purely an agricultural tribe and community, and we are no longer wandering in the desert, at least literally, certainly we are figuratively, over time, the Jewish people in particular, mystics, Kabbalists, said, okay, we're going to keep counting. We'll say a blessing each night, and then we will count. We will name that night. We will count up, just as we always have done. But instead of this grain offering, we will use each week, each of the 7 weeks during this period of counting, to focus on the lower 7 sfirot, the lower 7 emanations of divine energy, or pools of divine energy. So a sphira is this emanation of God, this God energy that is both God's and is ours, because of course we're all connected. God is in us and we are in God. So these qualities that we focus on each week actually become an opportunity for us to work on our hearts, to work on our souls, to grow certain aspects of our personality through the way we're moving through the world, through our behaviors, through our spiritual practice. Okay, that's the general idea. The very first week is the first of those lower sfirot, and the week we're in right now, and it's the week of Hesed. Hesed means love. Steadfast love. It's about creating loving connection. It's about kindness. It's about compassion. So this is the week we're in which we're focusing each day on giving and receiving love, of experiencing love, which can happen in all kinds of ways. Of course, it's not just romantic love. It's also the kind of love that we experience when we notice grace in our own lives, when we're able to connect the dots and find meaning and find connection in our lives. And here's where it gets even more amazing. So each day of each week, we focus on a quality within a quality. That means that we sort of refine and look at that particular quality, in the case of this week, Chesed, through a particular lens. And that lens for today, now that we're in this third day of the Omer, is Tiferet. Tiferet, which the Jewish mystics, the Kabbalists, locate in the heart. If you were to superimpose the sfirot, these qualities, on the human body, which they did and which we do, Tiferet is located in the heart. So it's about being balanced in our love. What does that mean? All right, so Hesed is this quality of loving kindness. The quality that stands beside Chesed, which we will dive into next week, is Gvura or Din. Gvura means wise boundaries, setting good limits. It's having a quality of judgment and limits around our behavior. And when Chesed and Gevura come together, loving connection and wise limits, they come together in the heart, in this quality of balanced and boundaried love. All right, that's a lot of background. So today is the day that we examine and practice living with Chesed, Tiferet, Shebechesed, this balanced quality of loving. And we can do that in all kinds of ways. Anybody who has loved anybody or anything knows that, love without limits, love without a sense of healthy boundaries can be really unhealthy. And a relationship in which there are only limits and only judgment and only criticism or lack of grace also is a disaster. I know as a parent, I set limits all the time. It's actually my least favorite thing to do, but I have to do it because loving children without boundaries, first of all, creates a lot of anxiety in our children, and also just doesn't serve them well in the long run. The same thing goes for loving partners. The same thing goes for loving other family members and friends. We can love with a healthy sense of boundaries. This is where I end and you begin. This is what I can do, not that, but this. And we can also do this in response to ourselves. We can love ourselves, of course, unconditionally. That's sort of different. But we can express love for ourselves with some really healthy limits. So what does it mean to talk to oneself with a quality of love, but that also takes into consideration, again, some just really healthy balance and limits. And then that comes together at the heart center. And of course, Tiferet is also symbolized by the quality of emet, of truth. And I think that's so beautiful when we find that sweet balance between chesed, love, connection, and gvura, setting limits. When we find that balance, it feels so true, so right, that we can be both in harmony. All right, so that hopefully has piqued your interest. If you're not already an Omer counter, it's not too late to start. There's probably, I don't know, there probably are a lot of how-to videos online. My Jewish Learning, I bet, is a great source, a resource for that. But the main idea is that when the sun completely sets and a new day is beginning, of course, in Judaism, we start counting the new day when there are stars in the sky. We count at night. We say a blessing, al sfirat Omer, and then we count the new day. And there's all kinds of, we have an old school handheld wooden counter in our house. But there's all kinds of new apps and things like that you can find for free just to help remind you to count each night. And the last thing that I want to say is that it's such a beautiful idea that we count up. that we acknowledge this is not a countdown to Torah, it's a count up. And I think that's just it's actually an incredible sort of framework for how we think about time, that we're looking forward towards things, that we don't assume that thing that we are looking forward to will necessarily happen, although we hope it will. In this case, the holiday of Shavuot. And that we just use this time in a meaningful way to build up our character, to build up our hearts in a way that will be worthy of receiving new Torah once again on the holiday of Shavuot. All right, so Moadim L'Simcha, Chagim Uzmanim L'Sason. May this week continue to unfold with so much chesed, with so much love in all of its forms, and grateful to be on this journey with you all. Shalom, peace.